Trying to be a bit more mindful of things you buy? For you and your family? Well, when it comes to laundry, choose All Free Clear. 100% free from dyes and perfumes. All Free Clear uses only essential ingredients that tackle tough stains and odors. And it's gentle on the skin. It's a powerful clean you can feel good about. So go on, pick up a bottle of All Free Clear for your next laundry day.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Ever wonder why so many people regain weight after stopping a GLP-1? Up to 40% of the weight lost can come from lean muscle. This weakens the body, slows metabolism, and makes it easier to put the pounds back on, creating a cycle of dependency. Prolon's 5-day fasting-mimicking diet offers a drug-free way to maintain results and support long-term metabolic health. In just 5 days, it activates fasting pathways to burn fat, protect muscle, and rejuvenate cells, all while letting you enjoy real food. Get 15% off plus a $40 bonus gift when you subscribe at prolonlife.com/iHeart. That's prolonlife.com/iHeart.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, along here with Tolliver. Hi, Tolliver.
Jeremy, I'm a firm believer that you are as young as you feel. My heart feels 20 and my knees feel 60. You know?
Setting us up for what I'm sure is going to be a very interesting topic tonight, because this is one that sort of is on everybody's mind, but no one really wants to talk about: the age of our leaders. So we are going to talk about it. I first want to welcome, by the way, the listeners in Anchorage, Alaska, tuning into Alaska Public Media. Welcome to The Middle. Before we get to our topic, Tolliver, last week's show about the opioid crisis brought in so many personal stories, very powerful calls on air, but so many voicemails as well. Listen.
My name is Stephanie.
Hi, my name is Rod.
Hi, my name is Christine.
Hey, my name is Andrew. I'm a former cocaine addict and alcoholic. I've been sober for 25 years, and it's possible to do it. I just wanted to throw some hope out there to the people who are listening that are really struggling, or the people who love someone who is struggling.
I am being told, no, I cannot have pain management care, and it's affecting my life. I am trying to find a conversation to start about people like me who are in chronic pain and need pain management, but don't have the opportunity because of the opioid crisis.
You can harp all day and all night about educating people. What needs to be done is that people need to be able to go to some type of a clinic and make their pain go away.
I've been in recovery for over 30 years. I think addiction is a disease of loneliness that people treat with isolation. And what we really need is connection.
Wow. Thanks to everyone who called in. So the question this hour: are our political leaders too old? President Biden is 80. Former President Trump, now the leading candidate to run on the Republican side, 77. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Minority Leader, 81. Iowa Republican Senator Chuck Grassley, 90. He's now the oldest serving U.S. Senator after Democrat Dianne Feinstein died in office last month. Former governor and UN ambassador Nikki Haley, who is 51, has been making an issue in her campaign for president. She says in the America she sees, the permanent politicians will finally retire.
We'll have term limits for Congress. And mandatory mental competency tests for politicians over 75 years old.
Well, I'm sure we are going to get to competency tests and term limits this hour. Tolliver, what is our phone number?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. You can also write to us at listentothemiddle.com.
And while we wait for your calls, let's meet our panel guests. Phillip Bailey, Pulitzer Prize-winning national political correspondent for USA Today, based in Louisville, Kentucky. Phillip, welcome.
Jeremy, what's going on, brother?
I'm doing well. And let's bring in our other panel guest, Dr. Louise Aronson, geriatrician at the University of California, San Francisco, author of the New York Times best-selling book, Elderhood. Dr. Aronson, welcome to you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, Phillip, you're in Kentucky, which is the home of Mitch McConnell. You've been covering his career for years. We mentioned him. I am not going to play the tape of him freezing up because it will trigger the silence alarms on all the radio stations that carry the show. They have those so that you don't have dead air and it turns an alarm on. But what do you think about him in particular and his insistence that he's fine at his age, 81, and that he's going to remain the leader of Senate Republicans despite what we've been seeing?
Senator McConnell, as we all, maybe some of your listeners don't know, is a survivor of polio. Mm-hmm. He's been very guarded about his health all the time that I've known him, very, very private about that. There have been incidents in the past where he fell at his home here in Louisville. I mean, people were wondering about his health, and he came out pretty quickly with a picture showing that he was okay. I think this situation was different because there were sort of a rolling disclosure, right? We see the first initial freeze. Then we find out that he had fallen at other situations, back with the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in Washington,
Mm-hmm.
D.C., we had found out he had fallen. But then there were other incidents where he had fallen and we didn't know about. Then there was the second freeze up. So these very public incidents and moments, I think, certainly was something that McConnell doesn't like to talk about. He likes to sort of keep a strong, very stoic sort of presentation. But I can tell you here in Kentucky, even whether they're political enemies of his or political allies, for a good number of weeks, the conversation was about what is his health and what is his future, what's Kentucky's future as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. Louise, is there a difference in your mind between Mitch McConnell and President Biden and former President Trump when it comes to their age and our question this hour?
I guess if there's one point I'd want to make, it's that it's less about age and more about health and ability to do the job. We have all known people who were young and couldn't do a job and people who were old and couldn't do a job. And it's more about the match between the person's ability and the tasks they need to do, in my mind.
All right, well, let's get to the phones. Again, our number is 844-4-MIDDLE. Let's go to our first caller. Jan is in Kansas. Jan, welcome to the Middle.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Well, go ahead. Tell us what you think. Are our political leaders too old?
Well, I think it was wonderful what the doctor said, because I am a longtime registered nurse and have worked in many, many fields of nursing. And at 74, I'm working. And as she stated, I don't think so much it's a matter of numbers and what age a person is. Mm-hmm. I think it's the quality of their work, their ability to do what they need to do and want to do, and the spirit in which they do it. And I think when a person's age starts coming into it, I think that's very detrimental, and I don't think that is an appropriate way to really judge what a person is doing and how they're doing their job.
Well, and do you think of the people that we're talking about tonight that we mentioned, President Biden, for example, do you think that he is too old? Do you think that he looks like he's doing his job the way that you would hope that he would at any age? I
swear, I wish that I could be and do and think as quickly as this man does. And the thing about it is that, as with myself, he has a lineage of experience, and he brings that lineage with him in all of his thought processes and in the way that he presents it to the public, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Jan, thank you so much for that call. I want to go to another one here. David is joining us from Houston, Texas. David, welcome to The Middle. Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Yes. So I disagree with the previous caller. I think that age already does play a role in our elected officials, in that you have a minimum age of 35. I think on the other end that a maximum, just starting at 65 to 70, I think that's fair. I mean, you have these politicians that are, as they get older, their views change, and which is great. People's views change all the time. But I just don't think it's very fair to our younger voters and such that this is really all their only choice. So I agree with the notion that age should play a role on the other end, and not just the beginning of a young elected official.
Phillip Bailey, what about that point that he made about there is a minimum age? The Constitution requires candidates for the U.S. House to be at least 25 and at least 30 for the Senate, more for president. But there's not a maximum age.
Right. Well, we all have to remember when the Constitution was written, what was the average age of Americans back in those days, right? Like that time period, that was considered middle age or older. Americans are living longer, therefore our elected officials, right, are living longer. And I think the reason, Jeremy, this is such a sensitive topic is because of all the demographics, the one demographic we all transition into is getting older. And I think the reason why President Biden is getting so much of this, and polling shows 77% of Americans think he is too old to run for re-election, including 69% of Democrats, by the way. I think the reason for that is that he's the main engine of this, because when you look at right-wing memes, online media, right-wing conservative media, cable news commentary, it is heavily focused on President Biden and these sort of stutter steps, him falling. Mm-hmm. He did have a stuttering problem, right? Remember, for most of his life as well. Democrats, for the most part, do not focus on from a President Trump's similar slip-ups or gaffes or moments where he's sort of out of it a little bit as far as his speech and presentation. They're focusing, obviously, on other things. I think the question for us is not should there be a maximum age or minimum age. It is, as the doctor said, a question of capacity. And I think for many people, for many Americans, those right-wing memes have seeped in, and they do have a general sense that, is the president up for this, right? Not just to be president, but to run, right? There's reports now about him having to take a different type of schedule, wear different type of shoes and different type of exercises just to stay up for a grueling campaign like this. It's a legitimate question, but I think the sensitivity is because we all age eventually.
Just checking in on social media, Little This, Little That on TikTok writes to us, I believe they are all too old as their beliefs are set from the 1950s, even the 40s. In fact, from their parents' set from the early 1900s. Tolliver, there's a Pew Research Center poll that finds Americans think the ideal age for a president is somewhere in their 50s. Both President Obama and President George W. Bush were in their 50s for most of their presidencies.
Yeah, absolutely. And before President Biden, the oldest president in U.S. history was Ronald Reagan, the Gipper, who famously made a joke about his age in a debate with Walter Mondale in Kansas City in 1984.
I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Gotta laugh there, even from Walter Mondale. Stay right there. More of The Middle right after this break.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of bitch, come round here and my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. If you're just tuning in, The Middle is a national call-in show. We're focused on elevating voices from the middle, geographically, politically, and philosophically, or maybe you just want to meet in the middle. My guest this hour, Phillip Bailey, national political correspondent for USA Today, and Dr. Louise Aronson, a geriatrician at UCSF and author of Elderhood. We're asking you, are our political leaders too old? Tolliver, what's that number again?
It's 8444-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353. Go ahead and give us a call.
Phillip Bailey, we said we were going to talk about term limits. Let's do that. Is there any chance of term limits happening in Washington?
No. To be point blank. I mean, every once in a while you hear politicians talk about term limits, but guess what? People in this country might hate Congress, but those same polls find that they love their congressperson. Right? So when you get your congressperson in who you've been voting for, suddenly you don't believe in term limits because you want that person in and out. Here in Kentucky, I remember in 2010, U.S. Senator Rand Paul as a candidate swore he was going to only serve a certain amount of terms. Well, guess what? He didn't live up to that, right? Mm-hmm. But what's interesting, though, Jeremy, I think, is that America is an outlier when we're compared to other democracies, right? Pew Research finds that President Biden, who is the 9th oldest leader in the world, right? That is, to put that in perspective, the median age of world leaders is 62, right? 2 decades younger. Usually in autocracies, we have older leaders like this. The U.S. Senate, its average age is 64. That makes it the 7th oldest legislative body. Mm-hmm. Even the House, which has a age of limit or requirement of 25, is a little bit younger at age 58. And the reason I think, Jeremy, this affects Americans, and you see Americans getting so wrapped up into this conversation, many of our campaigns are about the future. right? When politicians are running, they're talking about what we to look ahead as Americans. And what are the two big issues, both for conservative young people and liberal young people? The debt and climate change. Is an 80-year-old, a 90-year-old elected official going to be dealing with the debt and climate change? No, 22, 25-year-old voters are more concerned about that.
Louise, what about competency tests? The other thing that Nikki Haley brought up. What are those, and are they used very much for the elderly?
Well, there are different types of competency. There's sort of cognitive competency, and there are assessments we do in medicine to try and determine if somebody has some cognitive dysfunction and then eventually is trending towards having a dementia. There's also sort of legal competence, and those things tend to be separate. So in other words, and we also think about decision-making capacity. So those are things we do clinically. We also know that most people are diagnosed fairly late. No country has found a way of including that in a way of assessing older politicians. Now, is this something we have to deal with as a society more broadly? Probably. We have to acknowledge, though, that there isn't an easy answer. We're living decades longer than we used to. And the country, on the one hand, says these people should get out of the way. And on the other hand, says, why we have all these dependent older people. So you can't actually have it both ways. We need to figure out a way for people who can to keep working and for those who need help not to. I also think it's not just cognitive capacity, but one of the big risks of getting older is your chances of ill health and death do increase. That's just facts, right? Because we all end up dead eventually, ideally in old age. So is there a way of looking at someone's health and assessing their functional ability that would be useful? We have metrics for that, but that doesn't necessarily say whether you can govern, right? We had a president in a wheelchair.
Well, and also it seems like every time a doctor comes out and gives the report on the president, like the president's private doctor comes out, they always say, oh, they're in perfect health. There's nothing wrong with the president. Everything is great right now. So I don't know if you would even trust what comes out if a president were to take a competency test. Let's go to Ben in Utah. Ben, go ahead. Welcome to The Middle.
Hey, thanks. My comment was just, I think there should be term limits just because, you know, when you're growing up and you're taught a certain way for so long, and it becomes actually a fabric of who you are. And once you start getting older, it actually becomes you, and there's no middle ground there anymore. And I feel like there's no changing your point of view when you become a certain age. And I feel like the 50s, yeah, you there's still leeway. There's no middle ground for you anymore. That's what I think is so partisan with our politics nowadays, is because when you get so old, there's not really room for you to change your mind anymore because you've been taught a certain way to be for so long that is just what you are. There's no changing you at that point. And so that was my point. We're so partisan now that our older elected officials, there's no more trying to change their mind, and there's no leeway to reach across the aisle anymore at that point. There's no middle at all.
Ben, thank you so much for that call. Phillip Bailey, what about that? Do you find, as you talk to voters around the country, that they believe that older politicians are more sort of set in their ways about the partisanship that has polarized Washington?
Well, certainly I think that there's a sentiment in the voters that I've spoken with that, look, if a person's been in office for so long with a certain ideology, they more than likely are locked into that ideology. But I think the real question and issue we're having here and debate we're having isn't really a debate about age, right? We're debating the fact that we don't have access to our political system because oftentimes of gerrymandering and money. The reason why we see older politicians do well is because you have to have a lot of money to run for office. And I don't know about most of you all, I got a lot more money in my pocket than when I was 22 years old, right? And I look at someone like David Hogg, the survivor of the Parkland, Florida massacre. He's launching this new group called Leaders We Deserve, which is vowing to elect fearless progressives under the age of 35, right? Under the age of 30 for state office, but under the age of 35 for federal office. And the main issue he's going to run into, I think, is going to be access and money. The question I have, I'm looking forward to seeing in some of the polling and conversations for future stories, is for 2024, how engaged will that 18 to 24 demographic be? If age is such a big issue, right, such a big deal, will we see youth voters upend and overthrow some of these politicians at the ballot box?
Let's go to Anya, who is in St. Louis, Missouri. Anya, welcome to The Middle.
Thanks for having me. So I'm speaking kind of from an academic perspective. I'm a PhD candidate in cognitive neuroscience who studies cognitive aging and dementia. And I would like to preface this by saying that I am in favor of term limits and age limits. However, I have my reservations about cognitive evaluation. I'm not sure how that would be implemented. So we know that on a group level, as older adults, cognitive decline is all but inevitable, right? Especially after the age of 65. But there's a lot of individual variability. My concern is which measures would we use? Some of the measures that are currently out there, most widely used clinically, are simple memory tests that, even though they might capture some form of cognitive decline, they're not maybe as sensitive to things like problem-solving ability, decision-making. My concern is, who would be in charge of this infrastructure, and I'm wondering if there would basically have to be new, validated, reliable measures that could capture things that are specific to making decisions in the government. But then on the other side as well is also that, some people, even if they might not score as well on some of these very simple cognitive tests, they might still have fairly preserved cognitive function in those areas.
Let me take your call to Louise Aronson. What do you think, Dr. Aronson, about that?
I agree. It's similar to what I was saying earlier, that we don't really have the right methods to sort this out. I think another really important point is that there are certain measures of cognition that decline, but what we don't talk about is on the other side. Now, of course, we do sort of have younger ages where people aren't allowed to run for office. But we know that impulsiveness, ability to make complex decisions, to rein in your emotions, all those things are not very well developed in younger people. So what tends to happen is that we talk about the negatives of aging and not the positives, where people, when tested, if they don't have a dementia, and the majority of older people don't have dementia, are able to more reliably come to accurate conclusions than younger people. One of the statistics I love is from Harvard Business Review, which showed that diversity of age in a group leads to better productivity and more interesting outcomes, just as diversity of all other kinds. And that's partly age, and that's partly because we do come with different generations and different values, and pulling all that in the mix, just as mixing race, religion, or anything else, leads to better outcomes.
Yeah, I will say that one of my favorite people that I've ever known died last year at age 102, and right up until the end was absolutely sharp as a tack and filled with people around her who were much younger, who would come and hang out, take her out to dinner, all these things. I agree that age diversity, a group with varying ages is very good. Let's go to Suzanne, who's calling from Nashville, Tennessee. Hi, Suzanne. Welcome to The Middle.
Well, hi.
Hi. Go ahead. Tell us what you think.
Well, I would like people to think about the fact that Mick Jagger just released his first album in 17 years, is singing fantastically. He's 80 years old. The man just keeps going. He's confident in what he does. He's dancing all over. And I'm 75 and I'm still dancing.
So what do you think when people say that, for example, President Biden is too old, or former President Trump is too old, or Mitch McConnell is too old? It's time for them to let somebody younger come in.
I don't think it's a matter of age. And I was thinking that when Ben was talking, that the older someone gets can be actually an advantage, and the doctor just said that as well, to look at how they operate, how they handle things. You only have to look at a few speeches by Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden, and see a very big difference in their ability to clearly present something in a positive way.
Who do you think is doing a better job at presenting something in a positive way between those two?
Oh my gosh, I've watched every speech that's been telecast by both of them, and I've watched both conventions always. And I have to say Biden. And when Ben was saying that people get stuck in their ways, I mean, he is really modern in a lot of the things that he wants for America. He's listening.
Well, Suzanne, I'm going to take your question there, your comment to Phillip Bailey. Phillip Bailey, as you talk to people now, how much pressure is there from, let's talk about President Biden, from Democrats on him to consider whether or not to run this time?
Well, now that we see that Congressman Dean Phillips is gearing up for a primary challenge, I think that there is a growing, at least, voice in the Democratic Party that, hey, look, maybe we should put somebody as a contrasting voice against President Biden. I do think that, again, this anxiety is also based upon that it looks like we more than likely are going to have a rematch of 2020 between Trump and Biden. But, Jeremy, I think there's one piece here, and I think the doctor can maybe chime in on this as well, how age plays out differently in different communities. I know, for example, in the African-American community, listening to your elders, the idea that your elders represent a museum of knowledge, I gravitate towards older African-Americans who are in their late 70s, 80s, and 90s who can remember a time where America was very, very different, and they are a treasure, right, in our community. So I think, and also I'm interested in the fact that all this talk about competency tests or age limits, I'm very interested to see, would that even pass constitutional muster and not be considered completely ageist, right? I mean, I think about any sort of tests around public office, and I think of some of these 80-year-old grandmothers in Alabama and Georgia and Mississippi. They might have an issue with that.
Let me go to another call here. Nadia is joining us from Nevada. Nadia, welcome to The Middle.
Hi.
Hi, go ahead. What do you think? Are our political leaders too old?
I kind of feel like with the passing of Dianne Feinstein, I think, there should definitely be a sort of cognitive test, but as another caller was implying, it's kind of hard to assess that because it's relatively new science that we're, dabbling with. People are living older life expectancies that are really unprecedented, so it's pretty unique. I'm within the demographic of being a young voter. I'm 24, going on 25. I'm a political scientist at UNLV. I'm currently pursuing my master's. So, this is actually like what we're talking about in my American Pro Sem class. We're really studying voter behavior. And I really think, term limits are something that could be really unique to America. I mean, George Washington had the opportunity to, kind of become another king and, have the endless seat in office. And he really set the precedent with leaving at 2 terms for the presidency. And, I think it's so interesting that we accept 2 term limits for the presidency, but we don't accept it for other bodies in our legislature. So I think it's really unique and interesting to Western society as a whole that, there's a 2-term limit for presidency, but there isn't for other offices.
Well, and in fact, there are term limits in many states on judges, but there are not term limits for federal judges. Louise Aronson, your thoughts?
Ooh, well, the political thing isn't necessarily my expertise, but I do think we're going to have some way as a society of making it easier for people to step away without feeling like they're stepping off a cliff. I mean, in theory, we will all have to retire at some point. And I suppose if you're a very powerful person, that is even more difficult. In my practice, I start talking to people years before, because if you don't have a good plan, it does feel like you're losing your identity. And maybe we as a society need to make it easier for all of us to transition so we don't end up in situations. I think, I'm not sure I want to call people out, but we've mentioned at least 2 politicians who clearly stayed or are staying past when their health suggests otherwise.
Tolliver, the U.S. is not the only democratic country in the world with political leaders who are much older than the populations they serve.
Yeah, that's right, Jeremy. When Mahathir Mohamad was reelected as Prime Minister of Malaysia in 2018, he was the world's oldest leader. Listen here to an interview he did with Britain's Channel 4.
How does it feel to be, at 93, the world's oldest head of government?
Well, it's surprising, and I sometimes pinch myself to find out whether I'm really the Prime Minister again. Well, I didn't expect to be Prime Minister.
Because you're older than the Queen, even.
Yeah, 1 year.
And the Queen of England, of course, has passed away since that interview, but the now former Prime Minister is still alive. Stay right there. More of The Middle coming right up.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin. Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan, tonight 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife.
Boom, boom. This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
When segregation was the law, one mysterious Black club owner had his own rules.
We didn't worry about what went on outside. It was like stepping in another world.
Inside Charlie's Place, Black and white people danced together. But not everyone was happy about it.
You saw the KKK?
Yeah, they was dressed up in their uniform.
The KKK set out to raid Charlie, take him away from here.
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
From Atlas Obscura, Rococo Punch, and Visit Myrtle Beach comes Charlie's Place. A story that was nearly lost to time. Until now. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We're talking about the age of our political leaders. My guests are Phillip Bailey, political columnist for USA Today, and Dr. Louise Aronson, a professor of gerontology at UCSF and author of Elderhood. Our number is 844-4MIDDLE. You can reach out to us also at listentothemiddle.com. Let's get to some more calls, and we're going to go to Roy, who's joining us from St. Louis. Hi, Roy. Welcome to The Middle.
Hi. Good show. I'm really glad you're talking about this subject. I lived in D.C. when Ronald Reagan had Alzheimer's and nobody knew about it, at least not widely. And, it is a concern. You got to look at aging in this country, and the number of people with Alzheimer's is really astounding. I think the least we could ask for is that there be a more open discussion of this and perhaps even testing for the candidates. And I think if both Biden and Trump were tested, I think Biden would pass. I don't know about Trump. He says the most ridiculous and out of the blue things that, a person with mental disorder might say, and I just don't know what he's suffering from. But anyway, but I think it's an important subject, and I think that more people should be talking about it.
Well, thank you so much, Roy, for that call. And let's get another one in here. Let's see here. How about Richard, who is in Ann Arbor, Michigan? Richard, welcome to the middle. What say you?
How are you? I was just thinking that I've heard so many callers say that it's not about the number, but it's about the ability to do the job. And I was just wondering, what happens when at some point midterm their ability falls off and they can't do their job? There's no system in place to actually take them out of that job. We have to sort of either wait them out through their term, which they usually try and get reelected anyway, or at sometimes they just stay on forever.
Well, there is the 25th Amendment, Phillip Bailey. In the case of the president, there is the 25th Amendment, although hasn't been used.
Right. There's the 25th Amendment. There's expulsion for legislative bodies as well. I think, again, what you're hearing is that logjam we have in our political system, Jeremy. People just don't know what you're supposed to do with someone if there is an issue with their age and their abilities. But look, one of your callers, the 24-year-old student, made the point about George Washington voluntarily imposing that two-term limit on the presidency. That wasn't formalized in our Constitution until when? FDR, right? As my fellow guest here mentioned, someone who was in a wheelchair who had age and issues with his health was in office. And then when he died, it was such a shock to the country that the country said, wait a minute here. The voters kept wanting him to be president, right? Each and every time. So again, I think that the answer here, I'm looking for two things. One, how will younger voters actually respond in 2024, particularly as Dean Phillips is challenging, appear to be challenging Biden. But at the same time, I'm also interested to see if we're going to have a larger conversation about how difficult it is to get involved in our democracy, both from a money and gerrymandering standpoint, which makes people have more faith in these politicians who are already there. And one last point, remember, everyone talks bad about Congress and the presidency, but they'd like it when they have a veteran member of Congress who's accrued power, who's a steady hand, right? So a lot of communities, we are concerned. I'll say it this way. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and et cetera, Mitch McConnell may just have a bad case of 80, right? Because when we talk about Mick Jagger, he doesn't. It isn't really just his age. It's how age affects you. I don't know what I'm going to be like 40 years from now, right? When I'm 79, 80 years old. I hope I'm as spry and as active as I am today, but I might wear 80 differently than you do or anyone else on this panel does.
Well, and actually, Louise Aronson, you've written about the fact that, if you've met one 80-year-old, you've met one 80-year-old. It's case by case.
You took my line. Yes, I was just going to say that.
It's a good line.
Diversity increases with age in terms of our health and ability to function in different realms. And so it is sort of different. I mean, barring grave disease or something else, most 2-year-olds are the same and most 30-year-olds are the same. And that cannot be said of 70, 80, 90, or 100-year-olds.
Let's go to Charles in Chicago, Illinois. Hi, Charles. Welcome to the middle.
Hi. Hello. Good evening. How's it going?
Going well. Go ahead.
My opinion on term limits is I'm 29 years old. I think whether you're the president or whether you're working in the Congress, in the Senate, or the House, it isn't the place of 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds to be making decisions that aren't necessarily going to impact them long term. I'm 29, so I'm in a very formulative phase, I think, in my life where we're choosing to have kids and buying homes and settling down. And I think some of these decisions, some of these politicians are not necessarily going to have to live with. And respectfully so from the other caller, Mick Jagger is an entertainer, so whether he's performing tip-top all the time on stage isn't really comparable to a president who's making decisions that affect the world, I would say, right? Leader of the free world.
Are you going to make your decision on who you vote for in the presidential race, Charles, based on the age of the candidate?
Unfortunately, I think I would if we had competent people running, I think. But unfortunately, I think in this case, you have to choose the lesser of two evils and see who will fit you based on your own needs in this country. So I'm not necessarily partisan, but I think that's kind of the way that the country runs nowadays. So age isn't necessarily a factor in that, right?
Charles, thank you so much for that call. Dr. Aronson, Charles brings up something that Phillip was talking about earlier, which is, the people who are 80 years old are not going to have to deal with the effects of climate change, are not going to have to, the amount of people who have student loan debt in this country is absolutely not represented in our Congress right now. They don't have that kind of student loan debt because they're much older. What do you think?
Well, I think, again, we're sort of looking at one side of that picture. So the other thing is when you're very old, if Biden is elected again, he's not going to run. I mean, even term limits aside, there are, it will end. Whereas younger people have ambitions and sometimes they'll do things for the short run. When you have older people, they can afford to do what's right. They also, everybody says, oh, they don't know what it's like to be young or whatever, but they know what it's like to age beyond that. I mean, when I became a geriatrician, I was in my late 20s and I thought of old people as them. So when I talk about, younger callers doing that, it's because we all start young and it's unimaginable to us that we will become old. But as you become older, you realize, and you can look backward, there are some advantages to not having ambition for the next thing or needing the money, for your new house and kids. And I think we tend to just talk about the bad things and not see the advantages of being able to look retrospectively and being able to not have skin in the game, actually. And so you can do the right thing.
Let's go to Randy, who's calling from Minnesota. Randy, welcome to you. Go ahead.
Hi.
Not a great line there, Randy. Sorry, maybe you can call back. And let me just go to Kathy, who's calling from Illinois. Kathy, go ahead. Welcome to the middle.
Thank you. I find this conversation fascinating, but I think that there's a question that belongs as part of this conversation, which hasn't been brought up yet, which is why politicians in this country tend to stay around in politics as long as they do. And I think that if you really get down to it and you look at how people get into politics and stay in politics in this country, it's pretty much about fundraising and making money. And right from the get-go, that eliminates a lot of people who probably would have very good credentials in terms of what they could accomplish in public office. But if they're not a good fundraiser, they're not even going to be at the table. And then once you are in office, you spend much of the next 4 years raising money for your next campaign and your next election. So politicians don't necessarily want money to be taken out of politics, nor do their big donors who buy influence over time by keeping the politicians who they've helped elect in office. And so I think that until we can start taking money, the massive amount of money that goes into politics in this country, I don't know, short of mandating that people retire at a certain age, which I am not in favor of for some of the reasons that have been discussed on this show. I don't think that people are going to leave as long as they can leave office, significantly wealthier than when they came in. And it's hard to leave that amount of power that they accrue as a result of all of the fundraising that is part of that job.
That's a great point, Kathy. Thank you so much. Phillip Bailey brings up two thoughts. One, Mitch McConnell has been one of the biggest opponents of campaign finance reform over the years. And two, there were so many people when Dianne Feinstein was really having so much difficulty earlier this year and even last year, we're saying, why does she stay in there so long? What is her own goal in staying in office at that point?
This is, I think, the most sensitive part of the conversation, which is, what do you do? For a lot of people, retirement is death, right? It's the job, it's the activity that keeps you going, that keeps you moving and shaking. And I think that is a legitimate question to ask of our older elected officials. I think we often have that same conversation for older athletes, right? Like this fear of retiring, like, oh, if I retire, I'm not going to be relevant anymore. Or what else am I going to do with the rest of my life? Particularly if you're 81 years old or 90 years old, potentially become an advisor, I guess, to that younger generation. But I think you are hearing, particularly from your younger callers, like let's look at even Social Security, for example, which solvency is going to be an issue in 2034. From the 1940s to 1950s, we had older politicians, FDR, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower. What was the theme of the 1960 election? Right, JFK and Richard Nixon at that time, much younger men. JFK's whole point was this is a turning of the page to a new generation. It was the whole point of Bill Clinton when he was elected in 1992. I do think over the next 4 years, whether it's 2024, doesn't look like it, there will be a generational shift with this election, but definitely in 2028, I do think you're going to see a generational shift conversation, right? Because look at the Democratic side with Governor Whitmer of Michigan, Governor Newsom of California, Shapiro in Pennsylvania, Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, much younger people who are considered to be in line for potential presidential candidates. I do think that we are basically in the 1956, 1958 period, repeating that with older politicians who are clearly aging out. And I think the turn will be probably in 2028. That will be the generational shift on climate change, on the debt, and these host of other issues.
Louise Aronson?
I love those points. I also think it's interesting that everybody's so concerned, and yet they're still running, the approval's low. We have a system in which everybody or the vast majority of people seem to want someone younger, but the system somehow can't generate a younger candidate now. So it brings me again to think about, is age the only problem here? And I would say it clearly is not. It is among the problems, and we're going to have to sort that out, not just in politics, but generally.
I want to try to squeeze in another call here. Pete is with us from La Crosse, Wisconsin. Hi, Pete. Welcome to The Middle.
Hey, Jeremy. Thank you. Excellent discussion this evening. On that topic of forced retirement, I wanted to bring up airline pilots who they get their first class medicals every 6 months and they fly with chief pilots, but still when they reach age of 65, they're done. And we do that for safety reasons. I think there's an issue with old politicians, maybe more like an age of 75 as far as they're done, because while they don't have to respond as quickly as an airline pilot does, judgment and other mental abilities are very important for being a politician, just as they are for an airline pilot. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. Okay. Great, Pete. Louise Aronson, I was speaking with a friend the other day who's in his 30s, and I said, when do you want to retire? And he said, I have to retire at 60 at the accounting firm I'm at. You have to retire at 60. There are a lot of places in this country that have forced retirement ages.
There are also a lot of countries where the age of retirement for women is younger than for men, which makes absolutely no sense given that women live longer and often miss some work time because they're having children. So just because we have rules doesn't mean they make sense. And a lot of the retirement ages were set at a time where on average we died decades earlier. So I think we need to modernize that, if only economically, right? We can't complain about Social Security and then tell people they can't work. And what I'm seeing is two groups of people. There are the people who love their jobs and keep working while they can. And there are the people who are so poor that they have to keep working or go back to work to survive because they cannot retire at 50 or 65 and eat or have a roof over their head. So again, as with the rest of society, aging is becoming bimodal, where the have-nots are really having problems.
Let me just take a look at what's coming in through our email at listentothemiddle.com. Diana from Fort Myers, Florida writes, I'm a Republican, but I have no more sympathy for Mitch McConnell than I do for Joe Biden. Their time has come and gone. They're not on the top of their game. I suppose an age limit is the only way to go, since we would never agree to a cognitive test, which is a shame because people do age differently. Who would give it? And could we count on getting the real results? Probably not. Emily in Duluth, Minnesota writes, I fully support President Joe Biden, but there is no candidate who's from Gen X, my generation. I will vote for President Biden, but age for me is a factor. There should be an age limit for any office. And Kathy writes, do we really not have any quality leaders in their late 50s even? I don't believe that people in their 70s and 80s are useless, but they shouldn't be running the country. Phillip Bailey, your thoughts on those comments?
Again, I think that what we're talking about is really the health of our democracy more than just the health of the politicians who represent it. And put it this way. Let's say we have a person who's 38 years old and runs for president in this country, and they have student loan debt. Now how do voters feel about that, right? Like if you say you want younger people to run, guess what that's going to necessarily have? You're going to inherit all those younger people problems, which is my life isn't settled. I'm still trying to pay bills and get through life.
All right. Before we wrap this hour, we have a competency test to do with our guests right now. We're calling it, Whose Drumline Is It Anyway? And if you win, you are allowed to run for office no matter your age. Tolliver, and tell them how the game is played.
Listen, first, I want to be clear. If Mick Jagger was eligible to run for president, I would be the first in line to phone bank for him. Come on now. The game is simple. I play a popular drum line from a popular artist, and you just have to name the artist and the song. You can jump in at any point. Let's get it.
Oh, Madonna, Like a Virgin.
There we go.
Come on now. Come on now.
I knew I would lose, but I even knew that one.
You got it. You know, all right. Well, Phillip, at the free concert.
Yeah. I want to thank my guest, Phillip Bailey, a Pulitzer Prize-winning national political correspondent for USA Today, and Dr. Louise Aronson, a professor of gerontology at UCSF and author of the New York Times bestselling book, Elderhood. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
Interesting conversation. Thanks.
Absolutely. And join us next week, same time, same place. Tolliver, what is our topic for next week's show?
What role do you think the U.S. should play in the wars in Ukraine and Israel and Gaza? So.
President Biden says we are facing an inflection point, and he's asking Congress to pass a $105 billion military aid package, most of which would go to Israel and Ukraine. So we want to hear from you. What do you think? You can call us at 844-4MIDDLE and leave us a voicemail, or call in live next week, or go to listentothemiddle.com, drop us a line. While you're there, sign up for our weekly newsletter. Remember, The Middle is also available as a podcast in partnership with iHeart Podcasts on the iHeart app or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're brought to you by Long Nook Media, produced by Joanne Jennings, John Barth, Harrison Patino, and Danny Alexander. Our digital producer is Charlie Little. Our technical director is Jason Croft. Our theme music was composed by Andrew Haig. Special thanks this week to Louisville Public Media and to our partners, Illinois Public Media, Nashville Public Radio, and iHeart Media, and the more than 370 public radio stations that are making it possible for people across the country to listen to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We'll talk to you next week.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
When segregation was a law, one mysterious Black club owner, Charlie Fitzgerald, had his own rules.
Segregation in the day, integration at night.
It was like stepping in another world.
Was he a businessman, a criminal, a hero?
Charlie was an example of power. They had to crush him.
Charlie's Place, from Atlas Obscura and Visit Myrtle Beach. Listen to Charlie's Place on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com. That's Ticketmaster.com.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.